All right, good morning. Welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to be discussing a quick update for HUD's new plans, as well as the administration that wanted to roll out HUD's treatment and homelessness. So, we had talked a bit about drug addiction and other issues that they wanted to tightly focus on. And as many of you know, it's been a very contentious year. I mean, there's been a lot of circumstances where um, they've had a lack of funding for the continuum of care program, and in even some circumstances, like the city of Los Angeles, they cut off funding for homeless programs, at least till that's argued in court. So we finally got a hold of some of the manuals giving instruction, and I think a lot of people are curious as to what the premise would be, at least from the administration and HUD, if we're going to go out in public to determine whether or not a homeless person is drug addicted or has mental health issues that are beyond the normal scope. And so I want to read for you guys a little bit of what the administration is considering. I'm also going to publish some links to the guidance they're giving for this as well, because this will help us all kind of figure out what's going to happen once they roll this out. So I'm going to pull in some notes that you guys can't see. This will help me because I didn't feel like memorizing all of it. So the 2026 SAMHS toolkit promotes treatment first, approach to homelessness and addiction, and it argues that housing should be coordinated with evidence-based addiction and mental health treatment, recovery supports, as well as employment preparation, long-term accountability, and not treat as a standalone solution. What you might find surprising is actually what this program does. And even I was a bit surprised because, well, let me read you a little bit more so you can better understand. So the goal is long-term recovery and self-sufficiency, sustained abstinence, improved mental health, stable housing, and meaningful employment, social connection, as well as family and community reintegration. The program should be a full continuum of care crisis response, and they're going to do stabilization and detox treatment, early recovery and recovery housing, independent housing and employment treatment, early recovery and housing, and independent housing and employment. So, next up on their list would be the warm handoffs. Now, one thing I've talked about widely in our channel is, when you take and create a problem, when you create a program, and then you make it somebody else's problem. And this was what, to be honest with you, a lot of what they're instructing here is, you know, we're going to go out in public, we're going to adjust these people, and then almost immediately after that, make you somebody else's problem. And so that's a bit concerning because it's never worked. So warm handoffs, as they would like to call it, are central, of course, and staff, peers, and navigators should actively connect and follow clients between hospitals, shelters, treatment, recovery, housing, benefits, jobs, and community supports. Okay. And so, again, that's called the warm handoff. So, essentially, after I suppose the homeless person's been out there drinking or maybe having a mental health breakdown or otherwise using drugs, once they go through the first portion of this, it's the intent of this program to make it some other agency's problem, essentially. But, anyways, moving on there, recommended program practices include trauma informed care, peer recovery specialists, structured routines, individualized care plans, substance free recovery, housing, life and job skill training, faith based supports when desired by the client. And then they move on to success should be measured with transparent outcomes, not just a number served or housing placements. So that's a real big red flag for the administration is going to want proof of any federal dollars used throughout this course of actions to be sustained. In other words, it needs to be accountability. So if you are a nonprofit and you're offering any of these warm handoffs, you're accepting warm handoffs, the administration wants you to prove that your program, housing or otherwise, is effective. And so success should be measured by the transparent outcomes, not just numbers served and housing placements. These metrics include 12 months abstinence, housing retention, employment, return to homelessness treatments, treatment engagement, emergency room use, uh, avoiding overdose, arrest, recidivism, and the cost of successful completion. Communities should map available resources and gaps between outreach, shelters, detox treatment, behavioral health, healthcare, recovery housing, transportation, employment, and legal aid. Well, you're going to need a fucking army for that. First of all, this stuff has never been connected anywhere in the country. I don't feel that this is going to, even by a presidential um, decree, that they're somehow going to connect all this. It will require an army of people measurably to follow it. So I'm of the opinion now that I've had a look at the toolkit that just outside of detaining somebody for drugs, alcohol, homelessness, or mental health, that once you pass the hospital and detention, you essentially become somebody else's problem. I don't know that's any different than what's really being offered already, you know? And then there's an additional request that if you're going to receive any form of federal dollars, that you need to now establish whether this actually produces a result. What I'm thinking here is this is going to be very expensive for any nonprofit or otherwise to actually track. So, I'm going to be very honest with you guys. Like I said, I've worked 26 years federal level, maybe 27 at this point. I've served tens of thousands of clients. I can tell you this is just bullshit. Okay. Uh, big portion of homelessness has to do with nothing's connected. This doesn't connect anything. This is a circumstance where wishful thinking's happening, and nobody's going to have the time, the money, or resources to connect all these agencies. Nor is the city going to want to do that. And so I don't know that it's any different than what's already there. It's a wonderful talking game. Okay, so I no longer am of the concern that the homeless will be rounded up at every dollar store for talking to themselves and so on. Now that I see this, because it's absolutely no different than what's already out there. Um, Forced detention. I just I don't see anything in this toolkit that actually indicates to me that anything's going to be changing. Really. Um, Let me post a link to this for you guys, because I'm honestly just taken back. There was a lot of talk about this, and honestly, I've seen this kind of stuff before. Nobody's going to cooperate. I'm telling you, the hospital's not going to cooperate with treatment. The treatment centers and the free recovery centers are not going to cooperate with social workers. I mean, this type of thing has never worked before. Unless you put all these different agencies under one roof, I don't really see this working out. And besides that, it would be wholly expensive. The administrative costs would be crazy. And we live in a country where capitalism prevails, right? So if people can't make money off of this through the whole process, through each agency, they're not going to want to do it. So I want to understand how the federal government is going to compel a city and 13 different agencies, basically, that are offering everything from housing to treatment and so forth, to all cooperate. And who's going to foot the bill for psychiatric care at what, 30,000 a day? So I'm just wondering what exactly this is going to achieve. Maybe I'm not understanding this properly, but I've been looking at it. So let me provide you guys the actual toolkit so you can open this to your own interpretation. Uh, I'm linked that up right now in the live chat if you wish to take a look at that. But I mean, you're gonna want abstinence from drugs and alcohol, and self-sufficiency, improved housing, and complete cooperation. Well, people have a right to walk away anytime they want. So how are they going to get to step 13 without all these agencies cooperating? And that requires money. And again, administratively tracking somebody, that's exactly what continuum of care does. And the reason why it's not that successful, because it doesn't actually do as much that you think that it does, because it largely depends on the cooperation and training of the people that work at continuum of care and their caseworkers. But when you've got 400 people that are shoeless, high, drunk, or just basically homeless in line, all to receive one service through a nonprofit with only two caseworkers at 7 in the morning, where exactly are we going to actually run those 13 different steps to nowhere? And who is actually going to force these people to do all this stuff? You know, social workers aren't free. They're not going to clock in for free. Mental health agencies are not going to do it for free. I mean, their administrative, along with medical costs, would be astronomical. And so we're talking we're talking about the hypothetical organization of this, but this might have a meaningful option for the most severe cases. but it would require, a legal order by a court. And I don't see that in this language on the key points. So I would argue to you at this point, this is nothing but a rehash of bullshit. Okay. And honestly, police officers are not going to be trained that well for this. And so, objectively, if a person is both high or drunk or otherwise, they'll likely get treatment in the county jail because the police officers are not going to give you a free ride, without arresting you for the activity out there. And so, I just wonder. I just don't see this being any different than anything else. So this is the update regarding, ending homelessness and addiction. Well, it doesn't end anything. There's a presumptive concept here that all these agencies are flush with money and have the time and energy to deal with all this and organize it, but that's not the case. Nor is there a meaningful amount of funding to actually achieve this. If there was, we would have to probably raise the budget on homelessness 20 times. And so I'm just curious as to who the hell is going to organize all this. Or will it simply be a mandate or the empty result? And so anybody want to chime in on that, let me know. But so HUD's treatment person ending homelessness might be by virtue that we give you a mandate as a homeless person. If you don't complete the 13 steps, then you could no longer ever participate in anything related to homelessness, whether it be housing or otherwise. That might be the ultimate goal here, is by forcing people to do things they might necessarily not want to do. That's the only way I can see that this. That's another play or another angle with this is, hey, we're going to pick you up because you're not mentally healthy, or maybe we see you're high and you're tweaking at the red light. And so we're going to give you 13 steps that'll consume about 2 years of your life. If you fail in any of those things, you won't so much as get a dusty donut out of us. You'll never be able to get housing or otherwise till you complete it. The problem with that is most homeless people don't give a shit, anyways. And so if we if we implement this in this manner and then we give the forced results to the person, then it's real easy. They'll just go in the store and shop up for food, take whatever it means to whatever it means to stealing or otherwise. They don't necessarily have to complete the process. They create a new one. If you've ever met real homeless people, the people that choose absolutely to be out there, there's a reason they're not at the local homeless shelter. They're not like your ordinary people that have run into a circumstance. They quite prefer being out there living on their own on the street. And so they're not looking for any type of help, and offering a mandate isn't going to change that, compel them or otherwise, because there's too many other options at the red light with a change cup and otherwise. People don't stay at shelters. The real homeless hardcore don't stay there because they know they can't get high in a shelter, they can't drink when they want, and they don't feel like being told what to do. So, sometimes you cannot solve the general attitude of people. If that person wants to live as a free bird on the corner and do what they do without anybody telling them what to do, this is precisely what they're going to do. This mandate won't change that. And so, we need to get back to offering something and then seeing whether or not people want to partake. Demanding it isn't going to change the results here. So I feel that in some ways, HUD and administration may not understand homelessness at its core. If you've ever been out there and understand the homeless, you've served them, you've been out there, or you've been homeless yourself, you'd understand these things. This indicates to me this plan that's being derived probably by a Harvard student paid about a quarter per word to write. I don't think that kid that wrote all this shit understands that. I think it looks good on paperwork, but I don't think that that's going to change how people do business in the city of Los Angeles or even Skid Row. And so that's my main argument here. We're not actually addressing the actual different categories of homelessness. I compare homelessness to a lot like hurricanes. There's category 1 through 5. Category 1 is a person that's run into an incident in life that made them temporarily homeless. A category 2 is a person that's probably low income and over multiple events have become off and on homeless and surfing couches and have touched the surface of the sun a few times. A category 3 is actually experienced homelessness where they visited a shelter but were too scary to survive with the people out there on the corner and in the woods. Your category 4s are people that still have enough faculties left, but they've been homeless long enough to be able to survive otherwise. And your fives, these are the people that are truly filthy and look shamefully because mental health, whether it's mental health or because of drugs causing mental health, no longer understand what reality is. And therefore, no matter what you do, you're not going to change the imposition of them being on that street. Okay. And so these are my categories. These are not federal categories, but I've been out there. I understand that. Before I started in my career at 27 years, between the ages of 16 and my mid 20s, I was on the street for 10 years. I crossed through a large portion of the US, probably 7 or 8 states. And so I've met these people. I understand. Was one of them to a certain degree. I had all my faculties, but I understand this, and this doesn't indicate to me that we have a firm grip on reality when writing this. It doesn't indicate to me, and I can tell you half the shit on that list ain't never going to work on any real homeless person. Okay, sitting in a recovery house for a month ain't going to change shit. If people want to be sober, they don't want to be on drugs. You have to look at what caused them first to pick up the meth pipe, right? When shit's too awful, people will drink. I can think of a circumstance with a friend right now that parents passed away and they delved into drinking, drugs and alcohol because of the shitty situation. But, the reality of it is here, we could try this, but I don't see it being much different. It's basically a pig with lipstick. It's the same fucking thing we've already been doing, but it's been reinvented. Okay. So I'm not taking a shot at the president or HUD. I'm just saying that this really we did not even bother to sample the market. We talked to a bunch of industry leaders that don't know shit about homelessness, and they wrote up this toilet paper. And I don't think it actually is going to do much of anything. In fact, it's going to probably convolute an already poisoned well. Addressing homelessness is making an offer of something to those that reasonably understand what the offer is and have decided. The key metric here is decided. I no longer want to be high. I don't no longer want to drink. That's the only time people ever recover. You can put them through all the mental health treatment you want and all the recovery you want, but until that person decides on their own as an individual person in their mind that I'm done, that I want to be done, then only then will they move on to greater things. There ain't no talking story, no Bible, no church or recovery center in this country that's ever going to be able to force a person to change their mind. It has to be the human. That's when you've actually recovered. And this is what all this is about. Whether a person has mental health, drinking, alcohol, or otherwise criminal activity, it all stems from a starting point. And until we address what brought them to it and whether or not they're able to change their mind on their own basis, on their own terms, then offering anything is a worthless option. Okay? Well, if you had enough, you need to tap to get air. The street offers lots of pain. And let me tell you, Americans are a lot like they were 200 years ago when they arrived in this country with a shotgun and a wagon. It ain't any different than living on that street than it is today. So to think that people are simply going to be tired of being on the street, well, and like I said, when the pioneers came to this country, they were homeless too. And they went on to survive without a power, air conditioning, anything. Okay, that was all Americans 200 years ago. So what makes you think that the homeless give a shit now? The only thing that they do is might envy what those that have and from what have not. We haven't thought this through at all. So offering real solutions means that we're actually offering something better than what's out there, but only to those that have made a conscious decision that they want to move on, that they've had enough, that they'd like to take another try. That's what we need to understand is the psychology of homelessness versus the shit we write on papers and articles and this contentious plan here. Now, I do agree with one portion of this. There are some that are beyond, that are meaningfully understanding what's good for them. Some people have, by virtue of use of too much drugs, too much alcohol, or mental health has grown so severe that they're no longer able to make decisions. And in that respect, this could be best served by possibly creating a permanent housing situation with mental health by force so they don't die literally from not eating due to drugs and mental health. But outside of that very specific circumstance, when a person is no longer able to make reasonable decisions on their own, the rest of this will not work on standard homelessness. Because until Mary stops spinning at the light, turning tricks, when Bob was lighting the meth pipe in the forest in his encampment and says, "Hey, I'm tired of this shit. I don't want to wake up in a tent frozen to death until he's decided he's faced mortal death." Well, then will he choose to accept what's being offered out there? But what the problem that I see is, let's be honest here. I've looked at continuum of care as a whole. When you put people in the building with an attitude and you call them caseworkers, and so you got a person that's come to that realization: I'm tired of being high, I'm tired of being drunk, I'm tired of living in the forest, I'm tired of standing at the light with a change cup begging for money, and therefore I reside to the decision that I'm willing to accept help. But when they get to the help, what they get is the problem. And that's those caseworkers and nonprofits that don't do a fucking thing, right? They run their mouth. They have little to offer these people. They treat them like trash. And so that one time, that one window where we could have helped that homeless person, we've assigned the worst trash on the planet to both organize it, and then we hired a bunch of disgruntled fucking people that probably should be in the program themselves to go there and play caseworker. And then while we're in that delicate situation of time, while the decision is still relevant, the worker can't even fucking get them housed quick enough. So then it's lost because the homeless person walks away with, well, that was a convoluted fucking mess. Why would I ever bother twice? And so that is the real virtue of this, isn't it? We never offer enough to actually solve the fucking problem. There's not enough humanity left in the system to actually achieve this surmountable goal, is there? If any of you here that are viewers have been homeless or actually homeless right now, tell me that my sentiments aren't dead on. You know, people running down to donate their used socks and a fucking 3-day old cheeseburger, and we all pride ourselves on that trash. So what does a homeless person actually expect when they do submit and want something from the system? They'd like to get sober, but they've been dashed out the door, treated like trash, given used shit by a useless nonprofit, and caseworkers were paying $3 an hour that barely pass a mental health check themselves. And then the ending result is, yeah, we'll get you housing only if you pray to my toes, if you bend like bamboo and serve me, bitch. And so that's why once we lose them, we've lost them. Who wants to go back? They'd rather die in a fucking forest than deal with continuum of care. So I digress and I argue here. What are we really doing? What have we really offered? These are not pets. They're not cats and dogs. They're not asking to be maintained. And therefore, unless we've got something real to offer, then we need to shut the fuck up. These aren't real options. So I don't know how this is going to play out for the administration or continuum of care or all these nonprofits that profit. But even if one manages to get out the forest, drop the crack pipe, stop turning tricks, they're only met with more shit. Probably worse shit in the building than they are in the forest. And so solitude and solace is found not through the benefit of these agencies. So until we correct the bad behavior of nonprofits, pretending to be religious, pretending to be sober, pretending to be this and that, these people aren't going to come anywhere near the devil. They already know the devil from living on the street. So why the fuck would they go serve the devil? And I don't mean that in little terms, but you see my point? If we're going to offer something, make sure it's real and genuine from people that actually have a heart. Otherwise, we lose them. They're gone. They tried, and that's what they were faced with. So my argument is not that we need to give everybody free stuff or housing, but if there's an opportunity and these people ask for help, then we need to present the best possible case, and it will not be through continuum of care. So, guys, with that message being said, and a lot of different profanities, but that comes from the heart and the soul. If we're going to offer something, we need to do it properly through actual, people that care. That's the first part of the deal here. Not rush people and corral them in a homeless shelter and then tell them, oh, by the way, we'll call you in 10 years, let you know if we find a housing for you. So that's the problem. It's broken both ends. Maybe that should have been the title of the video. It's broken both ends. When the help is no better than the people trying to get it. All right, moving on back. We'll talk to the comments here real quick. Tasia, thank you. And hello, good morning. Ready Love Squares. Peaceful new day. Thank you much, Jay, for taking the time to keep us updated. You are deeply appreciated. Well, thank you very much. Hillbilly Hermit, good morning, and welcome back to the channel. You're becoming a regular. Lee Williams, good morning to everybody. Good morning to you as well. J.H. Wells, you can't end homelessness because there are people who lose their homes daily. Well, obviously. Lower the rent and housing payments. That's definitely, I agree with you there. H.G. Wells goes on, make sure people have a job, money to pay for rent. Understandable. Granny Love Squares, your message got retracted. But you went on to say there isn't enough humanity left in society to help people. That was beautifully expressed, sir. Not let mention the rape and sexual harassment of women and expertise. There's always a lot. I mean, this subject is obviously contentious, right? But I mean, if we're going to put in new plans, right? Then we need for HUD and its employees to step out into the street and talk to these people, not just pay children sitting in Harvard 30 cents a word to write a bunch of bullshit. If President Trump wants to help, then he needs to send his best advisors out to the street and stop taking advice from the directors of programs that only are incentivized through money. They're never getting, I don't think that President Trump has been given the whole truth behind the circumstances. He's been given the good advice of his advisors that talk to directors, but never the homeless. It's broke at both ends. And I hope that he finally does see the truth through it all. Yeah, we all want to save money in taxes, but obviously, like I said, these are not pets on the street. These are humans. They're recoverable if we could actually offer something realistic. And so it'd be better to have working people paying taxes than to stand at the light with a change cup, you know? But that's my opinion based on actually dealing with thousands of homeless and over a very long career, 25 plus years. I know this both personally as well as through my job, and I've seen it from both ends. And I can tell you, while this sounds rather amazing, if it's focused locally on those who can help themselves, that really, if a person's that far lost and it needs civil commitment, it's the only option really because they're unable to make decisions for themselves. But did God ever say people can't choose to die through their own efforts? No. Humans die all the time. Many die through winters and harsh winters. If you lived in this country 300 years ago, people probably lived to 35. Man, you'd be lucky to live through a harsh winter. So again, the will to live and not live is strictly up to the human. And so we don't need to incentivize homelessness, but we actually need to offer some real options that are realistic and based on actual information, not suits and ties from nonprofits and the well that's been poisoned, the local homeless shelter. They say it's nonprofit, but it's all profit. Everything's regulated by profit in this country, despite their tax status. Okay, if we're taking advice from them, they're going to poison the well and the opinion of all this stuff. And so that's why I think this needs to be looked at much more closely than what it has to better understand what real results would be. A warm handoff, well, that's all the system is that we have. We're just doing it again a different way. And so warm handoff as they put in the toolkit, is simply a cool word for making that homeless person somebody else's problem. And everybody's in a hurry to make them somebody else's problem because nobody wants to ruin their budget actually helping anybody that's really homeless, right? So I digress. Moving on, HULs do women do not have kids, do not let them in shelters, and there's abuse. Well, there's all kinds of issues, and that's really to be sorted out at the shelter. The video is not so much about that, but I appreciate you bringing those subject matters up. Well, guys, I've enjoyed talking with you. I would advise rewinding and taking a look at my argument to see whether you believe that actually meets the merits of HUD's treatment first plan. Am I on to something, or is this strictly an irrational video that's a tempest for most people? I think there's a solid argument here for both sides of the aisle. I think that we could achieve some results. We're never really going to fix homelessness because nobody in humankind's history ever has. Humans started as homeless. We know that better than anything anywhere on the planet. Much of what we consider homeless was everyday life for most Americans and other countries for the large portion that humans have been alive. So don't ever underestimate people's ability to live in the woods or on the sidewalk. We did this shit for a long time before we started building huts to live in, right? All right, moving on from there, guys. I make videos on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. They're live videos. Most of them are not fiery and they lack profanity. And I usually keep professional decorum, but some subject matters are very serious. And I'm going to share more than just decorum. We do EDUs or educational to help many of you navigate the system. That's going to be on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. Fridays, I typically take off because I'm tired of talking. I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing me rattle on. And anyways, we'll see you again either this afternoon for an EDU or tomorrow. I've enjoyed arguing this case. Remember, we're arguing at point. I don't want to de-evolve into arguments amongst yourself, name calling, or other treacherous behavior in this channel. It's not what it's about. It's about sharing opinions and remaining civil. Okay. If you're unable to do so, I will silence you in the channel permanently. Okay. And thank you for your time and enjoy your week. Okay.